I didn't unmute myself, but that's okay. I had to set myself up better anyways. All right, so before we jump into the game, we're going to discuss something that I think needs discussed, and I'm not going to discuss what went on in Tennessee. I'm not even going to bring it up. I'll touch on the subject of what took place, but not any specific place that it happened, um, because it's part of it. But it's more so the way you see politicians interact with these things and move politically. It's more so the way that we see people move around this with the media. And it's the way that this has unfolded that I've observed throughout my life. I'm sure there are steps that have taken place before that I could pull up historical documentation to show this is this and this is that, and here's how we got where we are within this, and this is why it's not a slippery slope. This is why it's a procession of events. It's a sequence of events that's designed to usurp your ability to pursue a life of happiness. It's to usurp your ability to live a life of liberty and of freedom, which you're supposed to be able to do here. So I'm not going to go all before my lifetime and before even just my memory, right? I can remember things under Clinton and forward. And I'm just going to point these out because this is the way that I was taught by the military in a very shallow, superficial way to conduct psychological warfare and how it operates, because it wasn't the primary mission for me. It was part of the mission capabilities of my job and what we did on a battlefield, just with our presence there. But it wasn't like this was our primary mission. It just was a side effect of our mission. And so I had a little bit of insight into it, and I did some of my own research into how it operates as well. Now, how this ends up working out is to usurp people's liberty and freedom. You have to reach a point where you can make the people vulnerable. And that's one of the biggest hurdles you have to surmount in the United States. And the reason for that is our Constitution and the way that our country was founded. It creates a cultural background that's shared amongst Americans, where we're not a group of people who are just willing to hand over our rights and freedom. We're raised in a society where we're taught to cherish them, to actually place freedom and liberty on a pedestal, so to speak. And that's very unique to us as a nation. So first and foremost, what you have to understand is when we had Bill Clinton as president, what I had heard was Democrats don't want war and Republicans propose it. The thing is when we had Clinton in office, he wasn't having us involved in wars, right? But soon as he'd start catching any kind of heat in the media, good old Bill had to go and do military action somewhere. Not big enough to be declaring war anywhere, but enough to get some attention. Things like Grenada, right? So let's go to Grenada and make an example in the Caribbean of Grenada and what happens when you decide you don't want to follow what America wants as trade set standards. Well, that was very short-lived military engagement, resulting in America's victory there. However, it kind of pushes away from what was going on with him in the media, right? Now they have something else to talk about, something a little more salacious, because we hadn't been engaged in wars in forever. So it was something that was more eye-catching to the American public and draws attention away from what's going on with the president. Then you move on to Bush, right? And what did Bush do? Well, we had the Twin Towers in 9/11, and Bush said, you know what, we're going to war. Like, understandably so, you're attacked, you respond. Whether or not we think that the response was warranted or that it was okay, neither here nor there. And Grenada was just one example. From Clinton, he did stuff all over the place, small things of similar reasoning. And then you got to Bush, and he was able to actually launch a war, right? And then, well, one war wasn't enough. He wanted to launch a second war, so we did that too, right, with Iraq. And what else did we get? Well, we got the Patriot Act. So what did all these accumulate into? Accumulated into installing fear within the American public. Fear of attacks of terror. Oh, we don't know when they're going to happen or where they're going to happen, so we need to have access to your data. We need to have access to your information. We need to have access to you so that we can prevent these things from happening. And so they did. And if you need evidence that this has taken place because of the Patriot Act, look no further than Edward Snowden. He did, in fact, point out that this is taking place. Very much so, against our rights in the Constitution, violating it. Not only for us, but people in other nations as well. We're taking your data too. Alright? So they just create fear. They keep it going. They keep it rolling. Fear, fear, fear. How do they do this? Outside of war, well, mass shootings, right? Now you need to be scared of shootings. These are a big problem. We got to get rid of these shootings. How are we going to do that? And we can do that somehow, right? Oh, hey, look, if we just start talking about limiting people's Second Amendment rights, it creates the next step. Division. That's not bad. We need to have more division. Meanwhile, under both Clinton and Bush, racism was on a decline. It's not like it was gone by any means, but it was on a decline, and it had been since the Civil Rights Movement in the 60s. You need to understand it had only been about 30 years for Clinton, right? So that's on a decline, so less division, more unity, right? And keep in mind, divided we fall, united we stand. So if we're not united, we're vulnerable, okay? So division is a big weapon. It's a big focus. You use things like propaganda and psychological warfare, which can be conducted through propaganda, in order to create division amongst people. That way your enemy's not able to really coordinate, and they're not able to do things to organize themselves. And if they're not organized, they're easier to destabilize, they're easier to usurp, they're easier to overthrow, they're easier to do whatever it is you need to do to eliminate or remove them from the picture as a potential threat or hurdle to whatever your goals may be. Now, Obama came into office, and according to numerous polls, racial tension started to increase again, thus division. We also had more shootings. Division, because now we have the race issues and we have Second Amendment issues. Division, right? Meanwhile, we're still at a period of time where people are thinking the Democratic Party is the party that wants peace and no war, and the Republican Party wants war. Obama doesn't want these wars. He inherited them. Meanwhile, he also got involved in Libya, right? Which we had. Why? Why are we involved in Libya? Like, if they have an issue, why can't they take care of it? Why do we need to be involved in Libya? That's a little ridiculous, is it not? Then you move on to the fact that I can't name places. I'm not sure what places I could name and which ones I can't, so I'm just not going to name any. But I know of at least 6 nations that we were also involved in under Obama that don't get discussed at all in the public. The media never brings them up. The media never discusses them. Some of them are classified. But there's at least 6 more nations that he had us involved in. There are media outlets you can go to who have discussed this. Media outlets, certain pundits from the left or the right, depending on who you listen to, that will name some of these nations. So, like I said, I'm personally not, because I don't recall which ones were classified and which ones weren't, and which facets of them that I remember that are the reason they're classified. So I'm just not going to discuss beyond the fact that we were in fact involved in numerous countries under Obama that we were not involved in prior to Obama. So the reason I point this out is because the appearance of having this two-party system is to give you a false sense of a second choice, when really they're still operating together for the same thing, and the whole Democrat, Republican, left and right thing was at this point a tool to further divide everybody. Because if we're trying to build bridges and create unity and solidarity amongst the masses, we're not unified. We're still not coordinated. We're still not cooperating. So the more times they can throw in these huge divisions, these canyons of division that we have to build a bridge across, it impedes our ability to be free, to have liberty in our lives. Now, also under Obama, what else started taking place? Well, the LGBT movement, right? Well, gay people should be allowed to marry, right? That makes sense. Why not? They got that. They got that pretty quick. Actually, this is probably the fastest that a group has said, hey, we're being marginalized and treated incorrectly, and we think we should be treated correctly. And a sitting president, Obama, who had gotten into office being against gay marriage, had changed their stance on it, and we had seen this corrected in record time. Yet that wasn't enough. Now the LGBT community still exists, but now they need a reason to still be around. So hey, we gotta start finding some other reasons. And you started hearing murmurs of the trans community then. Not much happened, but it was going on. Meanwhile, because of Obama's name, Barack Hussein Obama, right? Religion became a big issue. And once again, race became a big issue. Obama kept going on about race, which creates more racial tension, instead of just saying, look, yeah, I'm a black man, I'm the president, I'm the first black president, that's great, but I want to be remembered for what I offer the nation. Instead, he was making comments that dug those trenches deeper for race, because of the fact that his father came from a different country. Religion was a problem, and this started under Bush, in all fairness, where there were religious issues that were started to create division because of Islam and 9/11, right? So this was an issue that had started and was just being furthered once again. We also had the feminist movement starting to make changes in what it was. Not a huge deal, but it was. There started to be more of a divide between men and women socially, where it was, oh, men just hate women, the patriarchy, the patriarchy, the patriarchy. That's when that started to really grow and gain momentum again, as if we hadn't addressed a lot of the issues that they continued to bring up decades ago. So it was just one more thing. More division, and it's never enough, right? We just have to keep on pushing it. Now, eventually what happens is we end up with Trump, where this division climaxes, okay? They took all the seated division and said, now you have a guy that we can polarize because he says things that are ridiculous. He says things that are absolutely wild, especially if we can clip them out of context and present it as the only thing he said. For instance, when he was speaking about white nationalists and the KKK, and the media said, he said that those were good guys. No, he did not. If you actually went and listened to the whole thing, because I personally was very against Donald Trump first time that he ran, he earned my respect through his actions as president, being the only president to actually not engage us in wars, to be the very first president to actually cross the DMZ going into North Korea to try and negotiate with North Korea to create peace. The aggressions that we saw from Russia in the Crimea under Obama, for instance, those were assuaged to some extent under Trump, right? Because he'd made the very real claim of, hey, I have those kinds of weapons too. Let's not get into it. Let's discuss this peacefully and diplomatically find solutions rather than violently find solutions. And Putin was willing to sit down and talk to him rather than be harassed by the American government like he was under Obama and like he was under Biden and leading into now with Ukraine. So back to what he was saying about, to just clarify since I brought it up, what Trump had said about white nationalists and the KKK. He was saying that there are some good people in those parties, the same way that there are some good people on the far left who hate him. Like Antifa. I believe he actually pointed out Antifa and BLM and said there are good guys over there and there are bad guys over there. The same as with the KKK and the white nationalists. There are good guys over there and there are bad guys over there. He was just saying that the organizations themselves are garbage, but the people within them have good and bad qualities because they're human beings. It was a very based statement, but it was reported on in the way that our propaganda machine does things to push psychological warfare on the American people, furthering division. And that was super effective under Donald Trump. It was the most effective it's ever been on the American people with Trump. It just took everything that was divisive and made it polarized very quickly and in the most extreme way I've ever seen happen. And what you have to understand is what we've learned about psychological warfare, conducting it to try and win the hearts and minds of the people in Korea and the people in Vietnam, the people in Iraq, the people in Iraq again later on, the people in Iran, the people in Afghanistan, all over the place. We've been trying to win hearts and minds. And what we've learned is this is something that takes time. You have to do it slowly, very slowly, to win the hearts and minds of the people. Same way that you have to do manipulation very slowly, or people know what's going on. You can't just slap them in the face with it. They see it for what it is, and it doesn't work. Small steps, small increments. That's how you get anywhere. So what happens under Biden? Now their division is at an all-time high. Maybe we can start building some vulnerability in the American people. So that trans community that started exploring its options under Trump and coming to the surface a little bit under Obama, because the LGBT community had to start finding a reason to still exist, not as a community. That's I misspeak on my part, but as an organization. They had to find a reason to still exist because they'd already gotten what they wanted. So now they needed a reason to continue to exist. Otherwise, how are they going to get people to donate their money to them? Right? So, found the trans people. And under Biden, we see the trans thing in full swing, where people who are trans are not, it's not like they don't exist. These are real people, but it's being pushed on children and people who are developing in such a way that they think their gender or their sexual orientation is something that is in flux in a way that biologically it's just not. For the vast majority of people, at least, it's just not. So rather than just allowing them to grow and develop, explore their options, and maybe just go, I'm just an effeminate man, but I'm attracted to women, or I'm an effeminate man and I'm attracted to men, or I'm a masculine woman and I'm attracted to women, or I'm a masculine woman and I'm attracted to men, you've eliminated the ability for things like a tomboy to exist. You've eliminated things for a ladyboy to exist. You've eliminated the very real fact that you're like children who are developing in the human society as a whole is far more likely to just be homosexual than to be trans. But all of a sudden everybody's trans. The reason that this is what I'm bringing up isn't malicious or to bring hate on the group. It's because they're using this effort to emasculate society. The feminism movement in its current iteration, as it's evolved over time over and over and over again, does the exact same thing. Women need to take on more roles and more roles. They should be pursuing the things that men pursued, and they should have all these things, but men need to do the things that women do as well as the things that men do, but women shouldn't have to do the things that men do as well. When you hear women in the feminist movement talking about a 50-50 relationship, they're talking about men taking on things that the women do around the house and within the relationship, but never women taking on the things the men do. So what they're really discussing when they say 50-50 is 25-75 in favor of the woman having 25%. Okay? Thing is, men typically take care of things around the home that the women don't. And vice versa. It is what it is. It's not that it's a good thing or a bad thing. It's not that women are incapable or men are incompetent. It is what it is. Women tend to lean more toward doing things like laundry and cleaning, whereas men tend to lean toward doing things like fixing the broken sink, taking care of rewiring broken outlets or outdated outlets, doing things like cleaning out the gutters, replacing the roof, mowing the lawn, landscaping the yard. Things of this nature, the man tends to lean toward, or the woman tends to lean toward. It's not sexist in some way. It's just, for whatever reason, that's just the way, in general, each gender seems to lean toward doing things. It's not bad, it's not good, it just is what it is. Thankfully, it balances out to where together we take care of the whole thing, right? Like, shouldn't that be the focus? Is together we're taking care of the whole thing, rather than, well, you should do more of the things I do instead, so I have more free time? Shouldn't we just cherish the time we have and take care of the whole thing together? Seems like it'd be more of a good focus in my mind. But what it's doing is it's emasculating men, because everything that men do is toxic now, right? It's all toxic masculinity. Toxic, bad, evil man shit. The way that men behave because they have such a high ratio of testosterone in their body is toxic. But when you have something like those shootings taking place, you want those men there to take care of the problem and fix it. If someone breaks into your house, are you jumping up and confronting whoever's breaking in, trying to protect your home? Or are you waking up your husband and saying, someone's in the house, right? You want masculine men when you need masculine men. But society, through this propaganda effort, has been leaning toward emasculating us. So they're using the trans movement, they're using the feminist movement, they're using race, they're using religion, they're using your sexual orientation and your gender to create division and to emasculate society. And part of the issue with the trans thing is that it biologically emasculates men. If you go through operations or medications to go through becoming a trans woman, you have physiologically emasculated that man in a way that may not ever be recovered, depending on what all they've done. On the other end of it, if you have a trans woman, a woman who's transitioning to a man, a trans man, I mean, where you have a woman transitioning to a man, what you have is a situation where you're allowing them to, through medications and procedures, appear more masculine. But they don't really become more masculine in the sense that someone who's born a male and has that natural ratio of testosterone and goes through the raging testosterone during puberty that they go through has. They don't have that same response. Some of them will, sure, but in general, they just don't. Women never reach the same level of masculine as a natural man does. It's just the way that it works out. So you're not offsetting the emasculation of men by masculating women. It doesn't offset the same. If it did, you would see trans men competing in the highest levels of all forms of competition and winning constantly. But you're not. What you're seeing is trans women removing women from competition with other women. You're not seeing trans men removing men from competition with other men. It's not taking place in that order. As just a very real, very capable of, very observable comparison to illustrate my point. And the thing is without masculine men, society is vulnerable. Because when you have things like these shootings, masculine men are who step in and protect children. When you have things like someone breaking into your home or someone threatening you, it's masculine men who neutralize the threat. It's masculine men who de-escalate the situation. It's masculine men who solve these very real issues amongst society in that way when it comes down to altercation. So it's something that needs to be seen for what it is. It's not something that takes place rapidly. It's something that takes place across parties, regardless of who's in charge in the White House, who's got the most seats in Senate, who has the most seats in Congress. It doesn't matter, because we've seen every possible combination of those three things furthering the same goal. Because the first step is fear, because you can use the fear to create division. And once you have the division deep enough, you've made a vulnerability. You might not have the vulnerability big enough to take advantage and need to make it more exaggerated, which is what we're seeing now. And if you don't recognize it, you can't prevent it. You can still treat trans people like people. You can still treat women like women. You can still treat people like people. You are human first. And not create the fear, the division, and the vulnerability, but instead have unity. So, hopefully, some people see this, hear this, and understand they've been being fooled. And what you need to be trying to gain is your liberty. Stop buying into this whole thing of, well, it's not, they're a disgrace to our democracy, but we're not a democracy. We're not. We're a republic. And the reason, according to our forefathers who set up this country and the way that it operates, that we are not a democracy is because democracies always devolve into tyranny. And the entire point of our revolution and our Constitution, our Bill of Rights, the entire point of those documents, those efforts, is to prevent tyranny and to promote liberty. And what the consensus ended up being was that a republic promotes liberty, but a democracy devolves into tyranny. The thing is, you can subvert a republic and become a democracy. You can subvert a people and make them divided, make them fearful, and make them vulnerable. And when you have a government that spends as much money on war as ours does, they become very well equipped, very well adept, and very well versed in how to do so, especially when they have spent decades, almost a century, engaging in doing exactly that all over the world and cooperating with the media to make sure that they take the things that have worked for them in the past in other countries and implementing them here in ours. But I've had enough of being serious. It's time to play games.